Today we're talking about Mtech knives. I just got a package from a viewer who sent me these three Mtech knives, and I broke this one out to do this video. So people ask me quite frequently to do videos on cheaper knives, which I totally understand. I have a plethora of different types of knives that I do reviews on. I like them all. I've talked about that before. I could be happy with a $5 knife for specific reasons, as well as, you know, a $500+ knife. In fact, I have another expensive knife review coming up, you know, next couple weeks. A very expensive knife. And I have some more cheap knives, you know, and then a bunch of stuff in between. But people often say, like, hey, you know, I'm on a strict budget. I got 10 bucks to buy a knife. You know, I like to know your opinions on these, or, you know, what's good, what's not good. So I'm going to talk about Mtech and my experiences from it. I don't have reviews specifically on Mtech knives just because I haven't had great experience with them. I have to say I haven't used all of them. There are lots of them. I've used at least 10 that I remember, like actually got and used, including this one. This one was from a viewer. They got my CUTLERYLOVER name put on it, which I thought was really, really nice. It was a very, special gift. So this is one Mtech that I always kept, and this one actually sits by my computer desk, and occasionally I do use the thing. You could say, it's kind of beat up. Has created a little bit of blade play, just from using it for a while. And I mean, there's nothing, it's not like there's something wrong with the knife. It's just, it can't compete with a lot of knives out there that I'm used to using. That's all. It's very simply put, if you only use $5 and $10 knives, it's fine. There's really nothing wrong with it. They come semi-sharp. I mean, this one I got brand new, and it had an edge on it. It was usable. It lost the edge fairly quickly. The steels aren't great. They're lesser quality steels, lesser quality heat treats, and the performance is low. So that's why a lot of people stay away from them, just because they're cheaper knives and they tend not to perform very well. So people who are on super strict budgets, they tend to stay away from brands like Mtech and get a little bit more into things like Gonzos, or Sanren Muse, things of that nature, where you're talking $5, $10, $15, or $20, for these different knives, and they tend to be a little bit more usable than some of the Mtech stuff. But like I said, I mean, there's still plenty of people out there that EDC something like this, and they have no problem with it. They use it when it gets dull, they sharpen it, and it's just, that's fine for them. So there's many, many different levels of knife users and knife collectors, okay? I can't stress that enough. It's so hard because so many people will crap all over a brand like Mtech and say, yeah, it's total garbage, why waste your money on it? When in fact there are thousands of people out there who are buying them, using them, they're totally happy with them. Or even more so, there's people who are buying them but aren't using them. There's plenty of teenagers out there, and even adults, that buy all different types of knives just to collect them. They just like playing around with them. They put them in display cases. They have a collection. They don't necessarily need them. I know of people that have a ton of cheap knives and one expensive one. They have one Spyderco or Benchmade or something they carry every day, and then they have dozens and dozens and dozens of different cheap knives, because it allows them to have a bigger collection, more variety of knives, but on a stricter budget. So every knife has its place. You know what I mean? I'm not a knife snob, and I don't agree with people saying like, oh, that's total crap, this is crap. I understand it, where people are coming from. They'll say, yeah, Mtech, it stinks. Don't bother spending your money on it. It's crap. I get where they're coming from with that, but like I said, I still think that all knives have their place, even lesser quality and cheaper ones. So yeah, I mean, that's where I stand with it. My experiences from the 10+ Mtechs that I've actually used, they're just kind of whatever. They dull fairly quickly. They tend to have a little bit more problems than other cheaper knives that are out there, so I stay away from them. But today I just got these three new ones, and we're gonna talk about them a little bit. So I just opened the box. I was gonna do an unboxing video, but my battery was dead, so I was impatient and opened it anyway, but I didn't really get to look in these, in depth or anything, so we're gonna do it right now. So the first one here is an Mtech fixed blade. It's the MT2035. Now, of course, these are all Chinese-made knives. They all tout the USA design, so Mtech may, or I don't really know much about it, to be honest. They may be an American company. They just get all their stuff made overseas, is what it seems like, import it all. But yeah, this is a sub $10 knife. This is like $5 or $6. First impressions, it's super comfortable. The finger grooves are in here, lines up my fingers very nicely. The jimping on the back is not really purposeful. It's kind of rounded. but it's not too light, it's not too heavy. It actually feels very comfortable in the hand. It does feel like it's sharp. I don't know the blade steel offhand, and it does not say, it just says stainless steel on the markings there. The one thing I noticed though is the handles, they're just plastic, like plastic. It's funny because you say, oh yeah, there's a lot of plastic in knives. Well, there's a lot of synthetics. And although, you know, all plastic's synthetic, what I mean by that is that you'll see like FRN, you know, fiberglass reinforced nylon, you know, Grivery. There's a bunch of different types of plastics that are used in the knife industry. However, those plastics are extremely strong. You know, this is smooth like Lego plastic. I don't know, I can't stress enough the fact that this feels like actual plastic, you know, whereas the knives I'm used to, that plastic is definitely a different grade. It's a higher grade plastic. It could take much more abuse, you know. And again, you know, these are initial impressions. There's nothing set in stone. I'm not saying this is a bad knife or anything. I'm just saying, these are the things that stand out to me. These are my first impressions, you know. If I were to actually use this knife for a long period of time, my opinions may change, you know. Maybe regular old plastic is totally fine. Maybe you're not running this over with a truck or dropping it all the time or throwing it against rocks, you know what I mean? So we don't always need those higher end materials, you know, but they are nice to have just in case. But that's my first impression with this, is it's super comfortable, but I have the assumption that it's not gonna hold an edge just from my experience with Mtech blades. And then again, I'm just a little turned off by the type of plastic, I guess you could say, for the handles. But it's kind of cool, all black with the blue, you know, stands out very nicely. The sheath, super cheap, you know, Chinese nylon sheath. You know, just I'm used to this on a bunch of different knives. I've had hundreds of knives from China my whole life. I mean, thousands of knives from China. And this is just run-of-the-mill sheath for that. There is a little button snap on here, which is nice as opposed to Velcro or something. You know what I mean? It's not gonna fall out too easily. I'm really shaking the thing. I say it's slipping a little bit, but it's not gonna fall out. And then again, I don't know why you'd be upside down jumping around. You know what I mean? This is a belt carry sheath. So this knife, it's just like, you know, it's okay. This is one of those knives you can go out and just beat on. You know, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I beat on my knives. I mean, I'm talking like probably most young teenagers, you're like just stabbing trees and doing all kinds of crazy crap with them. That's why I see a lot of comments from younger viewers like, oh, the tip snapped off my knife. Yeah, because you're stabbing into a tree and prying it out. You know what I mean? Like that, because it's fun. You like using your knives, but you don't really have like a specific need. Does that make sense? I think that happens to a lot of people out there, especially when you're younger. When I was a teenager, I did all kinds of crap with my knives that definitely I should not have done. And they were cheaper knives and they were softer steel, so I didn't have too many problems with things breaking, you know. But yeah, you tend to do some dumb stuff with your knives. I mean, knives are cutting instruments. You're just supposed to be using them to cut stuff. It's that simple, but so many people abuse them, they don't even realize they abuse them. I know people, and I've literally had conversations with people before where they said like, oh, you know, my tip snapped, this knife's garbage, you know, what do you think I should get now? And they were talking about like a really nice knife, and I'm, what'd you do with it? Well, you know, I stabbed into a log and I twisted it and the thing broke off, and I said, well, you know, you're not really supposed to do that. They said, well, you know, if it's a good knife, it won't break. So obviously some people have a different expectation of what a knife should be able to do for the price point. Some people tend to think that, hey, if I spend a lot of money on a knife, then it's indestructible, and that's just not the case. To me, what defines a good knife? Well, one that's comfortable and stays sharp. You know, that's pretty much it. You know, besides that, it's designs are preference. Fit and finish, obviously, is something you can nitpick at, you know what I mean? And that brings me to the next knife here. Fit and finish. This is one of their daggers. All right, and just upon brief inspection, this has horrible fit and finish. So we could see, you know, down here with the bolster, there's literally gaps. This these brass rings, they don't line up. The actual brass itself is like crimped. You know what I mean? So it's all marred up and bent and stuff. It just doesn't fit very well. Look at that fitment right there. And this is supposed to be a nice clean line. You know, even like on the handles, there's multiple spots where I feel the tang of the knife, the handle here, because The handle scales are just actually a little bit too short. These are wood scales, but they're pre-cut, put together, glued together, and then pinned, you know, but it just doesn't, it's, after this step is done, you know, on a very nice, high quality knife, a maker or a company will go and they'll buff the outside and make sure there's no hot spots, no places where it's sticking out. This is literally sticking out. So that tells me that these are pre-shaped, slapped on top there and pinned together. You know what I mean? There's no like final step of really melding all these together to have smooth lines. I mean, this is sticking out over here on this side, sticking out on the end, so you get these little sharp edges. So that's just very poor fit and finish. I mean, from first glance, from looking at a stock photo, if you're looking on a website, you're like, yeah, that's a cool knife, man. That looks nice. But then you get it and you look at it real close and you're like, you know, look here. There's a gap here. There's no way to fix that. Doesn't quite line up. It's interesting in this particular knife that the dagger is actually like the stock is this full shape. In other words, usually the bolster's a separate thing, you know what I mean? And the blade comes down, and obviously being full tank's nice and everything. It's interesting in this particular design that the actual blade is this, it's the same shape, literally. And then the bolsters, there are two scales that are put on either side to match up with that shape. It's nice and strong, you know. I don't think it's just an odd practice, I guess. You don't see that very often. You know, this does have, it's a double-edged dagger. It is sharp, you know, and it is pointy. And this would work as a dagger. Because this is not like necessarily a utility style knife, this is a defensive style, this would work for that. Absolutely, if you need to defend yourself. You know, maybe it's not the best steel in the world or whatever, but this will certainly stab into someone. This will certainly cut them, you know what I mean? So it'll work in that function, you know, as like a boot knife or something. And more than likely, people who are buying this type of knife, like I said, they're throwing it at trees, they're stabbing it into logs and stuff like that. They're just goofing around with them, playing around with them. Maybe you get some biker that wants a cool dagger, you know, boot knife or something, and this is the option. This is what they get. Even though it's not really set up as a boot knife, you could still slip this into the side of the boot or something. And that said biker, you know, you're gonna carry around for years. You're probably not gonna stab anyone with it. So, you know, it's just always there, and that fits your need, I guess. You know what I mean? Or as a collectible, even though it doesn't hold any value, it's still a cool representation of this style knife. And this is like I think this one was like $11 or $12 or something. So let's say 12 bucks. So for $12, you still get that representation as opposed to paying 50 or 100 or 200 or whatever from another maker who's going to have, you know, a better version of this style knife. So yeah, it's still functional. And by the way, this one's MT2003. Same markings, you know, just USA design, stainless steel, handcrafted in China. But yeah, it's kind of a whatever knife, you know. Also, keep in mind too, as time goes on and you get more and more knives, cheaper knives tend to be less fun or less cool. It wears off. When I was a young kid, I bought thousands and thousands. Let me try to get this thing in here. This doesn't quite line up. There we go. I bought thousands and thousands of cheap knives. Not because I wanted cheap knives, but because that's what I can afford. And I like the variety. I loved going through my knife collection, and I went through my knives like daily. Every day, I'd play with my knives. And I have them all over the place. You know, I have all different display cases and stuff, and all different storage cases, and I just look at the different designs, and I try them out. If I saw a knife in a movie, I'd you know, run to my collection and try to find one that looks like it, and just being a kid, you know what I mean, having fun with it. So cheap knives do serve a purpose. And also, there's plenty of people out there that like a knife, but they really know nothing about it. So, you know, to them, the $100 knife is not going to be any different than the $10 knife because they don't know the difference. They don't know the difference in the steel qualities and the craftsmanship of it, you know, the fit and finish, materials used, all that kind of stuff. So to each their own. That's really what I say is to each their own. Mtechs, they're not great knives to me. That's my opinion, solely based on the fact that I've used thousands of expensive knives. So yeah, how can I go back and take this knife and really enjoy that, you know? But on some level, I still do. I really still do. So it's because I like knives. That's it. I'm not a knife snob. You know what I mean? I don't have the pinky up attitude of, oh, this is junk. Ugh. No, it's fine. It's whatever. It depends on what the purpose of it is. If you're going to carry and use it every day, yeah, in that sense, it's junk because it's not going to perform for you and it's going to frustrate you. It's not going to stay sharp, and that's the point of having a knife. If your knife does not stay sharp, why do you have it? You know what I mean? In this particular case, much better example than this. This is like a usable, or supposed to be, you know, very usable, functional, utilitarian, hunting style knife. So this is a knife you're going to be using all the time. A dagger style, you're not going to be using all the time. So that could stay sharp. You know, if that's your defensive option, if that's what you want to carry for defense, that's fine. Because guess what? That edge doesn't get dull because you're not using it. And if you do have to use it, it should be sharp when you do need to use it. So depending on the style of knife, definitely changes my opinions on different cheaper stuff. So the last one here is actually, it's super cool. I really like it. It's set up like a neck knife, and this is basically another one of those miniatures where this is mimicking, you know, a larger fighting style knife, a large dagger. You can see with the K-bar style handle here, this is a plastic, a hard plastic, and same type of deal here. This one is got 632 DGN, I believe. Looking through the viewfinder there, so I don't know how accurate that was just then. But yeah, my issue with this one, unfortunately, is it's non-usable. And let me zoom in to show you why. I don't know if you'll be able to tell, but it's way too thick of a grind. You're talking about a very narrow little blade going from the full thickness to the edge, and then having your secondary angle change there. It's just way too thick. This is a perfect example, let me back out, of the wedge effect I say all the time. So like our edge, we want thin. We want a thin edge. That's what creates your nice sharp edge. And in this case, it's, even though it's sharp, it's so thick, it's so wide of a grind that you don't have that feeling of being sharp. Now, this is brand new. This is brand new out of the box. I'm rubbing it against my hand. Okay, I'm not trying to cut myself, but okay, try the other side. Bouncing on my hand. I'm not cutting myself, even though it's sharp, but because it's so wide, it takes a lot more force, a lot more pressure to get this to cut. Now, will this rip open boxes? Sure, but you know, key word is rip. It's not going to cleanly slice through anything. I could go and regrind this and you know, make it a usable little neck knife, but then it takes off all the black. It looks like crap at that point. I'm just not going to do that. This is a little collector's piece. It's a fun little miniature. You know what I mean? It does have a point. This will stab, albeit not that great, but yeah, if you were to stab this in the cardboard as you're a 13-year-old kid and you get this thing and you think it's cool and you're stabbing stuff with it, yeah, all right, fine. I mean, like I said, that's what these things are. That's why people are buying these things. No one's buying this to use it as a neck knife. It's not very usable. It's not usable at all to me right now. Like I said, I don't have the interest in modifying it and ruining how it looks to make it functional. I actually think it's pretty darn cool. Even though it's a completely unfunctional knife, I still like it. In this particular case, there's a little notch on the handle here for the sheath. You can see there's a tab, so it only goes in the sheath one way. It kind of clicks in there, and then you can push the back of this plate to lift it out. It does pull out too. But yeah, so if you pop this in the opposite direction, it doesn't stay in. It actually won't go in all the way. So yeah, I mean, again, non-functional knife, but I like it. It's just for different reasons. That's it. None of these are awesome knives, but I still think that a lot of people can buy them and feel awesome about having them. Does that make sense? I mean, I know some of you guys watching have been around knives for a very long time and you fully hate stuff like this. You just don't like it because you know how much it's lacking. You know what I mean? The more experience you have with stuff, like using the example of cars, maybe you know nothing about cars, so you get into a car and you think, oh, this is a cool car, but you know nothing about it. And then the more you cars, then you start to realize, hey, that's not such a great car. Or, hey, I thought this was fast, but it's not. This one's fast. It's no different. Knives are the same thing. Once you gain more experience, more variety, and you start using something really, really nice, it makes it that much harder to go back and enjoy that cheap knife you used to love. You know, because now you know that it's lesser quality. Now you have a comparison. So these knives are awesome for people just getting into knives. Number one, you don't have to invest a lot of money to get a bunch of different, get a collection going and try a bunch of different styles. That's its purpose. But once you start carrying a couple $100, folders and stuff, it's like, you just can't find satisfaction in stuff like this. At least most people. Myself, still makes me smile. I still love trying all different types of knives. So there you go. There's my opinions on the Mtech brand as a whole. I've used enough of them to have a pretty consistent opinion on them. They're disappointing to me over and over again as far as usability. As you saw, fit and finish. Materials, it's just they're knives that generally don't hold an edge. And I can't say that for every one of them, but all the ones that I've used, I've been disappointed with the performance. However, they still have a place, just like all, cheap cutlery out there. They're totally fine for collecting and stuff. And don't feel bad if your buddy has some expensive knife and you have an Mtech. Who cares? If it makes you happy, that's all that matters. You know what I mean? And if you learn how to sharpen your knives, some of their models are usable. You know what I mean? It's just they're not gonna, like I said, they're not gonna hold a decent edge. So you're gonna find yourself sharpening them often. But a sharp piece of metal does cut stuff. I just feel like there's better options out there, even for such a cheap price. But yeah, I mean, like I said, all knives do definitely have their place. All right, even the cheap ones serve a purpose. So there you go. Plus, one last thing, I'll leave you with this. If there were no cheap knives in the world, how would you really appreciate your good ones? Because you'd have nothing to compare it to. I would say it's a rite of passage. Going through a bunch of cheap knives is something most of us do. You waste a lot of money and a lot of time buying cheap crap, but when you finally get that good knife, you have something to compare it to. You know it's good because you remember what bad is. If you never had cheap knives before and you only jumped into this game and learned about all this great stuff and only bought expensive knives, how do you know they're good? What do you have to compare it to? Most of us out there, we remember stuff like this. And that's why we appreciate our better stuff. So there you go. There's my opinions on it. So thanks for watching. Thank you again to the viewer who sent these to me. I appreciate it greatly. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon. Take care.